As the new year begins, there's always a push to make resolutions and plans. Do you know what you want to accomplish next year? Do you have goals that you want to pursue? How do you plan on accomplishing them? Today, I want to talk about some ideas about how you can be more successful in achieving the things that you want. Hello, friends. My name is Eric Cloward, and welcome to the Stoic Coffee Break. The Stoic Coffee Break is a weekly podcast where I take aspects of Stoicism and do my best to break them down to their most important points. I share my thoughts on Stoic philosophy as well as modern wisdom, and I share my experiences, both my successes and my failures, and hope that you can learn something from them, all within the space of a coffee break. This week's episode is called New Year, Same You, the Stoic Guide to Effective Resolutions. Life is long enough if you know how to use it. Seneca. This last weekend, my Trevor and I did a yearly review and planning session event online, and I wanted to share a few things that I learned from that session, plus share a few ideas of my own to help you plan for the new year. So the first idea I want to talk about is the importance of reflecting on the past. This is an important teaching in Stoicism for many reasons, the most important being that it's an opportunity to intentionally look back at our lives. It's an opportunity to see if we're living up to the principles that we hold. It's a time that we can use to see where we might make changes in our thinking and actions to be better aligned with who we want to be. Simply put, if we don't take the time to reflect on anything, then how can we know if we're actually living our principles? Not reflecting on our actions in the past is a missed opportunity to learn something. Examining how we handled a challenge in the past, for better or for worse, can also help reinforce where we've lived up to our principles and show us where we might have fallen short. So the Stoics recommend that we practice this daily, even if it's just a few minutes. As Seneca explains, "Wherefore, let us examine, observe, and inspect our own hearts, for we ourselves are our greatest flatterers. We should every night call ourselves to account. What infirmity have I mastered today? What passion have I opposed? What temptation resisted? What value acquired? Our vices will abate of themselves if they be brought every day to the shrift. O blessed sleep that follows such a diary." Reflecting each day or each week also helps to see what progress we've made on the things that we want to accomplish. What's the point of setting a goal if you never really check on your progress? I know that I've done this plenty of times. I get to the end of the year and I can't really point out a goal that I set out to accomplish and what kind of progress that I've actually made on that goal. So for me, this is going to change this year. I'm working on what I want to accomplish next year and have made a pact with a friend to check in each week to see how I'm doing. I know that being held accountable will help me to actually track my progress, so I'm making that a part of my weekly reflection. The next idea I want to talk about is the importance of gratitude. So Cicero said, "Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all others." In a world saturated with bad news, gratitude is the antidote to despair. It's easy to get caught up in the pessimism of the present moment and all of the bad news that we read online. Reflecting on the last year helps us to recognize all of the good things that happen in our lives, and it can help us to find the things to be grateful for. We can choose to focus on the good in our lives to help counter all the negative influence that seem to be overwhelming at times. An easy and fun reflection exercise that we did in the planning event was to open up our photos on our phones and go through all of the photos that we took over the last year. It was kind of cool to see all the things that I did last year, many of which I'd forgotten about. I saw the pictures that I took down in Frankfurt when me and my brother went to see the Australian Pink Floyd show. And by the way, they're a fantastic cover band that I highly recommend seeing if you ever get the chance. I also got to see all the places that I visited over the last year, and it was enlightening because I've actually been a lot more places than I really realized. So there are lots of ways to set goals, and I'm not going to get into the mechanics, but rather the theory. When setting a goal, I want you to consider a few things. So we all want to achieve great things, but what if the key isn't the goal itself, but how we pursue it? You should focus on the steps and the processes you need to accomplish a goal. Whether or not you actually achieve it is something that is not under your control. What is under your control, as the Stoics often taught, is your thinking and your actions. Anything that is directly under your control. Everything else, including the outcome, is outside of your control. When you set out to plan for your goal, make sure that you focus on what you can control and create the systems and processes you can put in place to make daily progress. For example, if your goal is to get fit, focus on the routine. Daily walks, balanced meals, consistent sleep. Let the outcome, weight loss or strength gain, take care of itself. What if I told you that imagining failure could be your greatest tool for success? When you plan your goals, it's important to plan for the things that can go wrong. Too often we fail to take into account all of the things that can stop us from actually reaching our goals. We go in with a perfectly optimistic view that everything will work out the way that we want. But remember, nothing ever goes according to plan. There will always be things that don't happen the way that you hope they will. By practicing premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, we are better able to see the things that can get in our way and come up with ways to address them before they happen. Now, this is not a pessimistic practice, but rather a realistic one, so you're less caught by surprise. When planning your goals, ask yourself, what could go wrong? And then map out the potential solutions. You won't be able to think of everything that could go wrong, but plan for the most likely and plan for a few that are unlikely. And even if things happen that you never could have imagined, developing a mindset that is uncomfortable with the unlikely happening will help you to roll with the punches far better than those that just assume everything will go according to plan. One of the surest ways to achieve a goal is to become the person who naturally achieves it. When you set your goals this year, especially if you're taking on something new, assume the identity of what you want to achieve. Now, what I mean by this is, say for example, you want to write a book, then make sure that you take on the identity of an author. And why is this important? Because there's a big difference between somebody that wants to write a book and somebody who is an author. An author does certain things, like have a schedule for writing every day, or at least a certain number of hours each week. They figure out how to connect with publishers. They study their craft and they work on getting better at writing. They act like an author rather than somebody who wants to write a book. If your goal is to take up a sport, then make sure that you take on the identity of someone that does that sport. If you want to run, then be a runner. If you want to cycle, then be a cyclist. Even if you're at the beginning phase, the more you can identify as somebody who takes on that role, the more likely you are to adapt the habits of that kind of person. And for most things, you're the one that decides whether or not that is part of your identity or not. Now, please don't assume the identity of a doctor if you haven't gone to medical school. So the reason why this idea is so powerful is that when you run into an obstacle on your path, you can ask yourself what someone who identifies as, say, a runner or an author, or in my case, as a professional speaker, would do in this situation. What actions do they need to take to accomplish this goal? It's a shortcut to shifting your mindset to see things through that perspective. Epictetus encapsulates this nicely, teaching, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. So this reminds me of a conversation that I had with somebody a while back about what it means to be a Stoic. When can you say that you're a Stoic? For me, it's when you try to apply the teachings of Stoicism in your life. There's no official test you have to take and no governing body that gives you a certificate stating that you're a Stoic. You study the Stoics and their teachings, and you try to live the principles as best you can. And even if you fail over and over, as long as you are trying to improve and apply their teachings, then you're a Stoic. The last and probably most important idea, which relates to the idea of adopting the identity, is when you set a goal, don't just set it for the outcome or the reward that you want at the end of achieving that goal. Rather, view the goal as a tool for growth. Now, what I mean by that is don't just set a goal for what you'll get, but more importantly, who you will become in trying to achieve it. Think about what it will take to achieve that goal. What skills will you have to learn? What kind of personal growth will need to take place for you to actually accomplish it? For example, will you need to become more disciplined, wiser, healthier, or learn how to be better with people? Any goal that is strictly focused on the reward rather than on the growth will ultimately be more likely to fail. A goal that helps you grow will be more self-reinforcing because it helps you become the person you want to be, creating a positive feedback loop. It also makes it more likely that you'll try for harder goals that you might have dismissed in the past because the point is not to achieve an outcome, but rather to help you to grow. This means that even if you fail to reach it, you've gained from pursuing it. And this is exactly what Marcus Aurelius meant when he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In conclusion, resolutions often fail because they're too focused on the results. But the Stoic approach transforms goals into something deeper, a way to align your actions with your principles and grow into the person you aspire to be. By making sure that you take time to reflect on your progress each day and each week, you can examine if what you're doing is effective. By adopting the identity of the type of person you want to become, you can shift your perspective on how to handle setbacks. Practicing premeditatio malorum, you can anticipate potential obstacles and plan possible solutions. And lastly, by setting goals not for their outcome, but rather because of the kind of person you will become, you will ensure that even if you fail to reach your goal, you become someone better in the striving. And that is a goal worth pursuing. And that's the end of this week's Stoic Coffee Break. As always, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and thanks for listening. Also, if you're not following me on social media, I would really appreciate it if you would. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at stoic.coffee, and Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube at Stoic Coffee, all one word. Thanks again for listening.